Hey y'all, it is Taylor Bridges here, back with another review of Ready to Love, Season 7, Episode 9. This episode is titled, Wife Me Please. Please y'all, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know you rocking with me, you picking up what I'm putting down, please. I really appreciate any and all engagement. I really, really do. Y'all, the gentlemen are in the lounge. Tommy calls Blake 9 lives. And I thought that was so funny. I'm glad Tommy and Ready to Love finally admitted it, because Blake is literally there for no reason at all. And Blake, I like Blake. But he's there for no reason, y'all. The gentlemen are tasked with introducing their connections to their best friends. So I expected this to be entertaining at the very least. What do y'all think? Was this entertaining, meeting the friends? Andre invites Jeffrey and Cynthia to meet his good homeboy, Jermaine. We're at Andre's place again, and I do love a good lived-in, cozy, but luxury apartment. Andre's place is super nice from what they've shown us. But, Andre, your apartment is not giving Forbes, boo. It's just not giving Forbes. The bulky black mirror in the hallway, literally right by the front door, makes for a very claustrophobic, tight vibe. Just on the initial walk-in. It's a bachelor pad. A nice bachelor pad. But it's not Forbes. Even for a dude. Cynthia walks in first. Cynthia looks nice. And here's what I think about Cynthia's fashion. It's never a cohesive look with Cynthia. She always looks nice and put together for the most part, but it reminds me of like Janique. Janique looks nice and put together for the most part, but overall she gave adolescent. It was childish overall. Cynthia, remember when Cynthia was first introduced to the group? She had that green dress that hugged her very well. The color, that green, was just so flattering on her skin. But she had these random cutouts that just cheapened her look for me. Like, it could have been grown and sexy, but it kind of gave like trying too hard grandma. And that's really what I got from Cynthia when she walked into Andre's. Cynthia looks good for someone's grandma that's trying to stay fine. But Cynthia is 37, so she's fairly young. So for me, something is just mismatched. And it's something throwing me off about her look. I can't put my finger on it. Does Cynthia's face look old? Is that what I'm seeing? Does Cynthia look? Is Cynthia giving 40 something? Is that what she's giving? It might be that, because Cynthia is a beautiful woman, right? And I do appreciate her having herself together for the most part. It is something throwing me off about Cynthia's look overall, but she is a beautiful woman. But I think Cynthia is giving a little old about the face. That's just my opinion. Jeffrey then arrives, apparently from work. Jeffrey is always either dressed for work or church up top, and then gym leggings on the bottom. That's Jeffrey's attire. That's Jeffrey's aesthetic. Andre's friend Jermaine asked both ladies how is their family life, since Andre apparently gets attached to women's kids. Cynthia says that she's very family oriented, and that on top of the 2 children she already has, she can give Andre 2 more and a dog. Nothing more. But Cynthia, what if you can't? Cynthia is in the age range for geriatric pregnancy at 37. Of course, at 37, she still also has a good possibility of successfully carrying and conceiving. But what if she can't? Will Andre be okay with the possibility of only having your 2 existing children as his family? I bring this up because I've seen this a lot on TV. Women with kids pursuing a man without kids and promising that man his own children to make up for him having to help raise someone else's kids. And what it does is it puts a lot of pressure on that woman. And then what happens when you can't deliver on that promise? Look at Drew Sidora. Ralph was already treating Drew's firstborn, who's not Ralph, her soon-to-be ex-husband's biological son. Ralph was already treating him differently than the younger son that he shares with Drew, his biological son. Do you think Ralph would have still been married to Drew and raising her firstborn had he not had a biological seed in the household? Cynthia needs she needs to stop promising childless men kids to appeal to them more, because that is not something that she can guarantee at all. She needs to be sizing Andre up and seeing whether he's the type of man that could still love her if she couldn't bear children anymore. That's more important, because you're at geriatric pregnancy age, and miracles and all of that happens, yes. But what happens if not? That's the bigger question. Jeffree says she protects her and her children so much, and she believes Andre can be the lead to her and her kids. Once again, Jeffree has learned absolutely nothing. She does not check the Carfax on any of these dudes, which is, to me, is so contradictory to this mama bear character that Jeffree keeps describing herself as. What proof have you seen, Jeffree, that Andre is able to lead? Lead you, let alone 3 children. What requirements did you set for that role? Jermaine asks the ladies, what do they see themselves bringing to a common foundation with Andre? But remember, Andre was unable to answer this question for Cynthia. Cynthia says she can bring forth an intimate, safe space for her man to express himself. Cynthia has consistently expressed this way of being with men, right? The entire time she's been on the show. But something is amiss. And I think Cynthia's intention and Cynthia's behavior as it relates to being this safe space for men are misaligned. Either that or she has horrible discernment. Because for her to long for a man as much as she does, she literally offers up her uterus on the first day as collateral. And for her to profess to being so safe and loving and pretty much hitting that sweet spot for men, right? Which is to be able to be a place where they can express themselves emotionally. A, why are you on the show? B, why are you so into Andre? Like I asked with Jeffree, what has Andre done for you to be offering your devotion and hospitality? And not saying she shouldn't be devoted and hospitable to her man. But what specifically about Andre deserves this? Andre can't even make an executive decision about his hair, his image. Jeffree and Cynthia are offering themselves up so aggressively, it's coming across desperate. Why would Cynthia, the consulting firm's CEO, the boss, the great mom, nurturing and catering, need to chase Andre? Choose Andre to be her main dude. It's giving desperate. And it's giving not as secure as it seems. And see, we're getting to the final, folks. So it's time we start seeing everybody clearly, you know? And Cynthia is one of my favorite contestants. But I'm starting to see you clearly, Miss Mamas. What, like, you got all this energy for Andre? Maybe something's off with her discernment. Jeffree says what she's bringing to the table is her spirituality. She's a woman of God. She devotes herself to the word. All the good stuff that sounds good. Okay. Jermaine asks about their other connections. Both ladies have one other connection, and they say that Andre is totally different from those men. And I actually disagree. I think all of those men have pretty obvious similarities. Andre, Anthony, and Mark Anthony, they're the three most liked and favored men of the group. They have it the easiest with the ladies. Andre and Mark Anthony are both without children at the moment. Mark Anthony and Andre are bachelors and they've never been married. Jeffree says she came into this process without a checkbox and wasn't picky because she did that in her past and only dated certain types of guys. But that's contradictory to what we're seeing. How were you picky in the past? How were you? How can you say that? How can you say that you were picky in the past? You let a dude that you knew since high school impregnate you not once, but twice. Nowhere in there were you picky for a marital commitment. And your picky behind chose a dude who left you and the children behind. And you took those high standards that you acquired of men and you did it again, making a third child by the same kind of dude. So maybe you do need a checklist. Maybe you should have came with a checklist. And maybe if you would have done that, you would not be giving your energy to the least compatible men for you. Andre comments in his confessional that Cynthia is a strong kind of woman. And I think that Cynthia should pay attention to that. That's how Andre sees her. Thus, that's the place of bias that Andre is going to experience her from, whether it's unconscious or not. She doesn't want to be seen as strong. That's literally the opposite of who she's trying to portray herself as to him. Her whole plight, is about being gentle and safe and what a man needs. But Andre still sees her as the strong boss woman who's hurt and tired of being hurt. That's why she's so emotional and vulnerable. And that perspective matters. Trust. His bias is already formed. And I think I think she intimidates him. And I think she might be unappealing because of how strong and bossy and independent she is. It's not her fault that Andre sees her this way, but she does need to notice it. We heard how he described Jeffree, meek, mild, lovable. And Jeffree has more kids and more children's fathers than Cynthia. And more drama with the children's fathers than Jeffree. But Jeffree has been showing herself to be a damsel in distress who needs a man and a leader. So she probably makes Andre feel like he has a say-so in her household and in her life. And that's a positive to Andre's masculinity, having that control. But this could too be to Jeffree's detriment, right? If Andre expects her to always act weak and helpless. Andre was bothered by how fast Cynthia answered Jermaine's question about protection as if it were rehearsed. And I don't know how much it's a valid point because I do think it was rehearsed. I think Cynthia is in such a desperate place. She said some of these same things many times over, right? So it may not be intentionally rehearsed, but it's probably memorized due to saying it over and over so many times, right? But Andre's friend Jermaine chooses Cynthia for Andre. Marc Anthony brought his best friend Mark to meet Jeffree and Mercedes. Mark's braids were perfect for a wig install. They were laid. They were perfect for like a wig install. He asks the ladies how they resolve issues in a heated argument. Jeffree says communication, and Mercedes says she may sometimes need a minute or so to just take a step back just so she doesn't say anything harmful. And I think both approaches are great, and they work even better in conjunction. Mark asks, what are some red flags about themselves that Marc Anthony has to be aware of? Jeffree says she overthinks. Mercedes says she has to come out of homie mode and show her domestic side. I think Jeffree is overthinking with Marc Anthony because she's insecure about their bond because they're not equally yoked. And he's doing what players do. He's telling her to hush it up and stop overthinking. Just like what Tony tells Morgan. But in her gut, Jeffree knows doggone well her and Marc Anthony are not compatible. They are in two totally different spaces in life. Mercedes says her red flag is that she's not showing her domestic side as much because, in my opinion, that's just not where she's at in life. Mercedes is having fun. She's going with the flow. And technically, so is Marc Anthony. But the only thing is, that won't get Mercedes anywhere with Marc Anthony if she ends up catching real feelings and or wanting more from him. Because so far, Mercedes is given situationship tea. Fun, flirty, there's some mutual attraction, they probably would have good sex. If Mercedes keeps playing it too cool and being too cool, Marc Anthony will keep her in that position. Because he's cool too. He's a bachelor. It'll actually be the woman making it known to him what she wants in terms of a relationship and a commitment, and that will get her, and that's the woman that'll get to come to the forefront. And once she makes these intentions known, that woman will require more attention, thus monopolizing the majority of his time. Because if not, he would have done away with her. And once she starts monopolizing his time, that leaves little time left for all the other prospects. And that's the woman he'll end up making his girlfriend. This isn't High School Musical, right? Where the underdog crush ends up with, the popular guy. This isn't Cinderella. How you start is how you finish. So unless Mercedes wants to be in a relationship where it's friends with benefits, it's a situationship with Marc Anthony, she needs to portray otherwise. But I don't think Mercedes is there yet, which is totally cool. I think they'd have a great time in a situationship. I think they vibe pretty well. The friend asks, why do they have second options? Jeffree lied, saying she's taking her time and that it's not a matter of you're my number one, you're my number two. That's a lie. After every one-on-one date, Jeffree has proclaimed to have found the one, the love of her life in that man. She has found her husband 3 times over on this show. And I have not seen one husband material so far. Not one man has been husband material. And Jeffree done found about 3 of them so far. And I have a very strong prescription. So I know I can see. Jeffree has literally been falling for every dude on the show. Jeffree says she can be weary with Marc Anthony because he doesn't have kids. And she already told us that she gifted her ex with his first kid. And if you're doing things so differently than what you've done in the past, why wouldn't that be a requirement to consider at first sight, right? Because that's serious and necessary. Jeffree having 3 kids by no means deems her ineligible for a good man and a long-lasting love. It's Jeffree having 3 kids chasing after bachelors with no kids to come lead her household. Her picker is just super off. Because why is Marc Anthony even a contender? If she's going to go for a man with no kids, he would more than likely have to be older. A man in his 30s has plenty of options in his peer group that are not women with 3 kids. So there's no incentive. Honestly, Blake was more of Jeffree's speed. He's dominant and aggressive the way she wants. He'd come in and control and run her household the way she wants. She can squeak with her baby voice as much as she wants because he likes it. And he already has his 3 kids, so they can blend, swap, and share all the kid responsibilities and so on. No, I mean, and not that, her and Blake would work out in real life, but him and like Anthony, they're more of Jeffree's speed. And if she didn't like those 2, she should have went home. Because it's given you peaked early, Jeffree. And you're still living in that heyday mentality. But reality is painting a different picture, mama. And until you face reality and date within the realm, she's going to keep chasing, trying to be that exception to the rule. She's trying to be that exception to the rule. I know a lot of people that operate from that mindset of being the exception to the rule. But for love, I'm not doing that much chasing. It'll literally be lighter on her to not date single bachelors with no kids. She could keep trying for a dude like Marc Anthony, but for what? Jeffree is beautiful. She's already been through enough with men. Why not just get a successful man in his 40s, maybe early 50s, whose children are grown, or he splits custody with them, so that they're only there 50% of the time. He looks good, so she's still good enough to still be okay with being intimate with him. He has money, and he's on the brink of retirement, if not already retired. So he has free time, which will align perfectly with the age of Jeffree's youngest by the time he gets to high school and is almost out of the house. Like there's a much better lifestyle awaiting Jeffree and her 3 kids with an older established man, who's finished having kids and just wants to relax and enjoy the fruits of his labor. As opposed to a young hot bachelor that's just hitting that sweet spot of making money in his career. He's just reached the point of being ready to start on a family. What incentive does Marc Anthony have to come in and father three seeds that belong to somebody else, and he has no kids? That doesn't even make sense. There's no incentive. And I am not even shaming like women with kids. I'm literally thinking about it from my standpoint. I wouldn't do it with a man. What? I have no kids. I am not dating no man with 3 different kids and all these baby mamas, baby. For what? No. That doesn't make sense. No. I'm not even like in my prime. I'm doing great. What? Absolutely not. So I empathize with like a Marc Anthony. What does Marc Anthony need with a Jeffree with 3 kids? No, that doesn't make sense for him. I don't think so. I think Mercedes is much better for Marc Anthony. And Marc Anthony's friend agrees. Him and Mercedes are just in the same place in life. They just are. And similar to Andre with Cynthia, Mark Anthony may be intimidated by all that Jeffree needs of a man. And Mark Anthony is not on stepdaddy level at all. Lyndon is inviting Morgan to meet his friend Troy. Morgan looked gorgeous. She always does. And I think she's probably the most beautiful woman on the show to me. Which I've mentioned is amazing because Morgan's the eldest. Arena from Love and Marriage DC is also the eldest on that cast. And she's the most fly on the show. Divine from season 2 of Ready to Love was the eldest, and I thought she was just always so put together, always so beautiful, and she handled one of the youngins on the show, Alexis, like light work. Okay, I love it. I look up to those women because that's what I aspire to look like when I get older, right? I just wish Morgan's behavior and class matched her appearance. But it doesn't, so wish denied. Morgan says her issue with Lyndon is his 5-year plan. Why at 40 years old does Morgan even want a man living in his parents' basement? Troy brings up the Nair incident, and Morgan said, because Lyndon told him, I'm glad, Morgan says she planned it and researched whether she could go to jail, and that's a lie, because you could certainly go to jail for that. It's assault. And if not jailed, you certainly could have charges pressed against you and you could be sued. But either way, you could have faced serious consequences for what you did, Morgan. Be glad you did not try that on anybody other than who you tried it on. Telling Lyndon that she'd not do that to him because he's not a bad person is a very unaccountable thing to say. And it shows no growth. Even if Lyndon were a bad person and he was a liar, that would not warrant or excuse assaulting him. Because if the tables were turned, that would not be excusable. So grow up. Morgan says she doesn't run away at obstacles, but perhaps she should. Because it seems like she wants to be able to spaz during these obstacles and then talk it out, forgive, and move on like nothing happened. So maybe she should try walking away when obstacles come. This date never had to happen. There is no sort of compatibility to dissect or examine between Lyndon and Morgan. Blake brought his friend LaShawn to meet Sue-Ann, the first guy and the only of the episode to invite a woman friend for the task. She looks like a type, pretty with a little touch of doing too much. Because Blake loves the glammed up women. That's what he likes. So LaShawn asks, can Sue-Ann have his back? And Sue-Ann basically is just like, she's already been caping and defending Blake to the other women, you know? Which I still understand, right? Since though he hasn't taken her on a solo date or done anything romantic to show her he likes her, he still hasn't treated her poorly. So just because the other women have had bad encounters with him, she hasn't. And she has the right to go off of that, right? Sue-Ann has been divorced for 2 years, and this is the first serious dating experience since that divorce. LaShawn asked how Sue-Ann felt about blending families with his 3 kids, and she gave a short answer basically saying they'll make it work. There was absolutely nothing to talk about because Blake and Sue-Ann have no real chemistry or hopes of a future. I think LaShawn did, though, ask some really good questions in a polite way, and everything else is pretty pointless. Tony has Marcia and Morgan meeting his friend, and this was the first outfit of Marcia's I actually liked. The friend asks about kids. Neither lady has kids. Morgan says she raised a few children, so she has a good handle on what it requires. And I can't judge that statement because I have no true context, so I can only take her word. But I will say that it speaks to Morgan's seriousness about wanting to conceive with the right person, being that she has gone this whole time without having kids. The friend asks, do they have a 5-year plan? Marcia has one, but Morgan says she has a 2-year plan. She wants to be married. And when he asks how she plans on getting that executed, Morgan says prayer, patience, and someone on a serious path, right? And at first, I understood her. Right? I get it. I get her not wanting to be, someone's girlfriend for a bunch of years at her big age, when she wants marriage and kids. But her execution style is immature. Prayer and patience and understanding have nothing to do with the fact that you need to learn to keep your hands to yourself. And you need to grow self-confidence and stop comparing yourself to other women. And you need to have self-love so that you're not giving dudes that are not your men ultimatums about giving you attention and not dating other women. It's like her execution style puts the expectations on the man when Morgan has some work to do herself. This is only work she needs to do if she is going to even get a dude that's going to want to take her seriously in 2 years' time. Let's start with not bragging about narrowing your ex's hair. Because I don't know if Tony finds that kind of stuff funny. Morgan wants Tony to open up, but when he gives her his time and attention, she doesn't use that time and attention wisely to get to know him better. And what Morgan is doing is something, some women do pretty often. They require and demand so much from the man up front and make the rest of their time together about that, instead of just cultivating an easygoing environment that naturally encourages him to talk. Like baby voice Jeffrey. They don't want to go through the levels. And there's levels to this. What have you done, Morgan, to show him that he can open up to you and trust you other than you saying that he can? And I'm not even saying Tony is worthy of this grand gesture from any woman at all. But Morgan isn't playing the game properly to get what she wants. And if she keeps behaving like this, she'll definitely die alone. The friend thinks that Marcia had great answers and Morgan was direct and all about Tony. Anthony has his friend Miriam to meet Jeffrey, Cynthia, and Suanne. She's meeting Cynthia at Anthony's house, and Suanne and Mercedes will be meeting her together later on. Cynthia arrives. Miriam asks what Cynthia and her child's father is about and what is it like. She explains she's known James since she was 12 and that he's not a nuisance to her relationships because she knows how to put her foot down. And I highly doubt that, but okay. Miriam asks if Cynthia knows how to be submissive, and we already know this is Cynthia's favorite topic. So definitely she has her monologue ready, right? And she says she's ready for a man to lead, since she's been doing it for herself so long. And I think Cynthia is in an advantageous situation, even with her having 2 kids, because they have their father in the picture, to the point where Cynthia and the father are cool and they have great interactions. That makes a huge difference. She splits custody, so she has them half of the time. Compared to Jeffrey's situation, plainly put, it's a little less messy. And I think Anthony appreciates where Cynthia is right now in life. And I think he's picking up what she's putting down. He sees her how she's trying to be perceived. Strong and mighty, yet she's submissive and she's willing to let a man be the lead. he empathizes with her as a single parent. He knows what it's like to have and lead a family. He's had a different set of life experiences than Andre that make him, in my opinion, more compatible with Cynthia. Pardon me. When Mercedes and Suann are meeting Anthony's ex Miriam, or pardon, not ex, best friend Miriam, Mercedes arrives first. Miriam asks her, pardon me, does she have kids? And she says she doesn't, but she says she wants to be a parent, even if that's just parenting a dog. And that's fine. Mercedes is going with the flow of life right now, right? She's taking her time. Nothing wrong with that. But I don't think Anthony would seriously or should seriously pursue someone that flowy. Like that flowy. Because it's great and all, but Anthony has to have a bit of structure as a dad. So there's only so flowy that Mercedes can be for him. Suann arrives and she says in her confessional that there's a lot of filling in the blanks she has to do with Anthony, and I don't think that it should be this difficult to read if a guy likes you. Suann is letting the guy's words influence her efforts instead of letting their actions tell her what she needs to know. If my friend came to me saying they couldn't tell if a guy liked her or not, I'd say, how does he act? Because I don't know about y'all, but I'm not absolutely sure. If I'm not absolutely sure that you're into me based on how you treat me, I'm not about to keep dealing with you. Taking mixed signals from a dude? Yeah, right. No. There's too many dudes making it obvious. Very obvious how they feel. It's too many dudes making it very obvious for you to be chasing behind some empty words. Suann should know better. And even if he did like her, clearly he doesn't like you enough to step up his communication after you've complained about it so many times. I wouldn't waste my time. This isn't Anthony's first rodeo, you know? He knows what to do. She does not need to be low-key begging for Andre to show her that he likes her. He does not need to do that. After 2 times max, it's time to move on to whoever is reciprocating whatever energy you're putting out. But Suann, you're not catching it, so whatever. Anthony does end up outright just telling her he likes her, just at the table with Mercedes and the best friend Miriam. Miriam asks, what role will Anthony's daughter play in Mercedes' life? And she kept it consistent, Mercedes, saying that while she does have apprehension, it's because she doesn't know if she's, ready for that responsibility yet. Which is what, Mark Anthony should be saying aloud to Jeffrey. By the time the day ended, everybody's plates were still full, so that was confusing. Miriam liked Mercedes' honesty, and he was just pretty much telling, she was pretty much telling Anthony to take what Mercedes is saying seriously. Mercedes has been being honest about, not being necessarily ready for a man with a child. So take that information to heart and don't be surprised or upset when her actions continue to reflect that. Ultimately, Miriam thinks Cynthia is the best candidate. I agree. And I do hope they get to the end together. J-Dub, I see what you were saying about Anthony. And now I can't unsee it, but I'm still doing some homework on it. The men are all in the lounge for deliberation. Andre says he doesn't know if he can believe everything Cynthia is saying, but he wants to give it a fair shot. I don't think he really feels that way. Like, he can't trust what Cynthia is saying. I think Andre is intimidated by Cynthia, and I think he's getting cold feet, realizing that Cynthia is going to need much, much more than Andre can provide, and especially emotionally, and more than he's ready for at the moment. So he's trying to find an out, pretty much. My allergies. I did like Anthony's point about Sue-Ann wanting to prove a point and her requiring so much reassurance for him. Like he said, he wants to avoid the back and forth. He told me this, she told me that, He'd rather go through the process and make his decision at the end. And technically, that's the point of the show. Technically. My prediction is that Sue-Ann and Marcia are in the bottom, with Marcia going home. And I was absolutely correct. As far as who was in the bottom, Sue-Ann composes herself very well, I think. But I don't know what Marcia has living on her head. Marcia ends up getting sent home, and that's great. Next week should actually be fun. They're doing the infamous getaway trip. Tony and Lyndon are going to be competitive. So which will make a bigger fool of themselves. Who's going to do it first? We'll see. I'm hoping everyone clocks in, come to work on this couples trip and really give us some entertainment and something to talk about. But I thank you so much for tuning in. I really, really appreciate it. And I will see you at the next one.